Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast, a security awareness series. This is episode 301. I'm Chris Hanegi, CEO and founder of Social Engineer LLC, the Innocent Lives Foundation, and the Institute for Social Engineering. And this podcast has been around since way back in 2009. As always, the sponsor is Social Engineer LLC, and this year we have a lot of new things happening. You can go check out our website. Right now, I think one of the hottest things that we're talking about, when I say hot, I mean it's kind of disturbing, but the amount of vishing that is happening around the globe. It is quickly becoming one of the top vectors that we're seeing from threat actors. And I get a lot of questions from people. What can we do? How can we actually audit our people, train them, educate them to be aware of this and to report properly? So if you go to social-engineer.com, check out our vishing services. We have human-to-human vishing services that can really assist your company. So go check that out and reach out to us. We'd be happy to meet and talk about it. In addition, if you like the topic of social engineering, you should be in our Slack channel. We have, I think, close to 2,000 people in there now, and we're talking about all aspects of SE every day. Even there's a job board. We've had people find employment and employers find new employees there. So feel free to hop in. The link is in the show notes. If you don't see it, just hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll get it for you. Also, I invite everyone to take a moment to go visit innocentlivesfoundation.org. That nonprofit there has been around for just about 8 years. And we are over 560 cases now. I think somewhere up near 570. Our mission is to help law enforcement around the globe geolocate people who traffic children and create child abuse material. And we are doing a great job over there. Really, we are. We need your support and help. So if you're a parent or caregiver and you want some information on how to talk to your kids, it's on the site. Or if you'd like to donate to us, you can do that at innocentlivesfoundation.org. And last but not least, if you like the music on the show, it is none other than Clutch, the best rock band on the planet Earth. As you know, Neil helped me start the ILF 8 years ago, so big fan before that, but even a bigger fan after that. And if you like this episode, give us a thumbs up, a like, and keep your comments coming in, please. Your ideas, the themes that you have, or topics you want to hear really do help us. So let's talk about our guest today. I've known Travis for quite a while, but we haven't had him on the show yet. So let's talk about that. Travis Farral has been working in the information security since 1990s at places such as Nokia, ExxonMobil, and XTO Energy. He's currently the VP and CISO at Archaea Energy, a BP-owned renewable natural gas company based in Houston, Texas. He has spoken at events around the world on topics as cyber threat intelligence, MITRE ATT&CK, and incident response. Notable activities during his career include everything from programming logic controllers, building and leading SOCs, driving forklifts and standing up cybersecurity teams, developing threat intelligence programs, and handling responses to incidents, among many other things over the past few decades. I love that you threw forklifts in there. I really do. Thanks for coming on the show. Yeah, it's fun. So I like to start off these episodes with the same question. How did you get here? I'm sure you didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a CISO. So what was the path?
Well, I honestly never thought I would ever have a career in security. I didn't know that security was like a thing. I got into computers in the 80s, like everybody else, with Apple IIs and Commodore 64s and things like that.
That was mine.
I got into the modem scene and, learned quite a bit during those days about how switches work and how the public switching network works. And I'll leave it at that. But it turns out those activities became, kind of foundational. When I started working at Nokia in the early 90s, I just naturally kind of gravitated towards, well, how could this be abused? As I was supporting users and manufacturing lines and all kinds of other things. And I think that that instinct is what led me into the path of security. And the rest is kind of history. I mean, I just took advantage of opportunities that came up, followed my passions. And I think, things then are much different than now. So I think the way that I came into security and the way that I grew in security during those days in the late 90s and the early 2000s is probably much different than what I would say the pathways that exist today. So, as I got more experience and got, more into leadership, obviously, eventually that led to CISO title. And I've been working in CISO positions now for, 7-8 years, I guess.
Yeah, I think now, like my story is very similar to yours, but not ending up as a CISO or a CISO. But I think
good for you.
If the young people did what we did, they're in prison now, right? I think, and we weren't.
That's the truth.
It is. Because right now, I think like back today, I did the same thing, goofed around, but it wasn't malicious. It was more curiosity. And we never did it 100%. To destroy things, right? You didn't do it. So you weren't going to go destroy something. You did it like, oh, wow, I didn't know if you played this tone over a phone, it did this thing,
100%. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But now they just don't have that ability to learn that way, which I think is one of the topics I want to talk to you about, because after hearing your pathway, what if there is a young person sitting there saying, well, I want to be like Travis. I want that path. What can they do to get there and become a CISO now if they can't do the things that we did?
I think they still can. I think it's just different now. I think one of the probably more, sexy, if you will, ways that people get attracted to security is the whole idea is like hacking and compromising something, getting access to something that you're not supposed to have access to. And there's so many healthy ways to take that energy and channel it into things like, hack the box challenges. And there's so many YouTube videos and other things out there. Like, you don't even have to go to school for these things. Like, you can learn all the skills that you need to be able to do this stuff online, generally for free. You can pay for things, if you want a more like regimented way to learn. Obviously SANS is a great, option for folks that have, funds available to be able to go take in a classroom setting and have the opportunity to do labs and things that are teaching you these very skills. But you don't have to. You can do this from, the comfort of your home, on a modern laptop. It has plenty of juice to be able to run VMs and do, stand up like, Kali and different environments that you want to play around with. And you can basically just do everything you want, whether you're interested in attacking or defending. There's plenty of options out there. There's a lot of stuff available now that weren't around when you and I were coming up. We had to kind of use the real world more or less. So
it's interesting. A lot of CISOs that we have on, actually, I think almost every one of them say the same thing. They talk about CTFs. They talk about, going out and finding these hack in the box or these VMs that are made to be vulnerable, building your own lab, joining. There's ctftime.org, I think, is a site where they list like every CTF around the globe.
And there's a lot.
Almost a lot. I think there's more CTFs than there are security conferences, and that's saying something. So
that is saying something.
It's interesting because, when I'm sure for the same feel when I'm interviewing someone and I ask them, like, what do you do to keep fresh? And if they tell me, well, I'm going to college. Okay, that's cool. Or if they say I'm doing CTFs, oh, I'm interested. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Same.
Yeah. You spend your free time just hacking for fun. Okay. Now you're telling me something, right? Okay. Yeah. So we got the path. We got some of the path going because right now, like, we're seeing just such a massive rise in third party and supply chain compromises. So
100%.
What do you suggest? Like, as a CISO, other CISOs are listening to this. Other security teams are listening to this. And you can't argue. We're just seeing this type of attack. It's just gone up hundreds of %. What do we do?
Well, I'll tell you what my perspective is. I don't know that this is the perspective, but it's the one that me and my team are kind of oriented towards. As we've seen over the last probably 18 months, the scariest attacks that we see are attacks from our own suppliers where they've been compromised, and we're now seeing legitimate emails from their infrastructure and even from individuals that we interact with coming to people in our organization. And sometimes there's not a direct way to detect, there's nothing malicious about the email itself. It doesn't include malware directly. It's usually some levels of links, using legitimate infrastructure, like third-party tools that we all use in our, day-to-day lives, Dropbox or, you name it, Trello, any of these things could be used. So it's very hard to detect, and the end result is attacks that slip past a lot of your normal defenses that are geared towards more, stuff that's coming from the outside and not from trusted inside the trusted circle. So our position now is basically to treat every single supplier that we have as hostile as much as we can, with the tools that we have.
Yeah.
To try to orient our tools towards the possibility that anything could be weaponized against us. You know, even tools that we may see, you know, on a regular basis. So what does that mean? You know, like, okay, how are you doing that, Travis? So the first thing we do is in our self-phishing campaigns, we're absolutely hammering our users with examples, you know, usually lifted from real life, of third-party suppliers that have been compromised. So we want them to be sensitive to the idea that these things can happen. And we want them to get used to using that report button, because that's usually how we're going to find out about it. So we start with that. Oh, thank you, Apple. And then
even it agrees with you. AI agrees.
It totally agrees. Yeah, exactly. Thanks. And then the other thing we're trying to do is we're really, really digging into available third-party risk management tools out there that will help us be able to, you know, track and gain insights on some of the activities that we're seeing. You know, the reality is that, you know, Microsoft Graph, you know, we're a Microsoft shop like most folks. There's a lot of great detail in Graph that is not necessarily teased out through, you know, existing Microsoft rules or anything like that. So we do a little bit of our own kind of homegrown stuff in Sentinel and places like that we can to try to just look for behaviors that shouldn't exist, doesn't matter what. You know, like when we have a third party that, you know, normally interacts with 5-10 people internally. If they're sending emails to anything more than 20 people, that might be an indication that they're now trying to move laterally inside our organization to try to gain a foothold in our organization. It's hard to, given the amount of suppliers that we have, do those types of rules for everything, but we can at least do it for the ones that we have key relationships with. So we try to come up with smart ways to do that. Then on the third party side, we're really looking for something that is going to help add more capabilities to that. You know, like if they're doing, AI kind of looking at behavior across all of our third parties, there's a lot of ways to detect behavior that's not normal. You know, like, hey, they've never used this third party tool before. Why? You know, at least let us look at it if we see them sending a link to, you know, box.com or something when we've never seen that third party use box.com before, you know, or they're suddenly using a tone that's different. You know, like the tools for email nowadays can detect stuff like that, you know, like, hey, you really need to look at this very top secret document that I'm sending you. This is very important. Well, you know, it's an electrician company. Like, why would they be sending us something? You know what I'm saying? Like these things, you know, we don't have time to read all the emails that flow through our environment, but that's where these tools come in that can help us be able to sift these things out. So really, you know, the whole point is we're trying to think about every possible way that we can bring something to bear against this problem and try to get it in place and test things out and throw mud at the wall and see, does this work? You know, hey, that's a great idea. Let's try that. Just because just letting it go is just asking for a bad day, you know?
Yeah. As a vendor of, you know, my clients, I think one of the things that vendors should be thinking about is we do not put logos on our website. We don't talk about who our clients are. I'm not going to broadcast to nation states who I'm working with, right? Because that's going to make me a target, right? I don't want to say, hey, bank of so-and-so and, you know, energy of so-and-so and government of so-and-so. And now they're like, oh, well, we need to get them. Well, my 15 person company is going to look much juicier than, you know, a bank that has 200,000 employees or an energy company that's global, right? That has the resources like you have, right? So, I think suppliers also need to be thinking about, we all want to brag about having great clients, but that puts a giant bullseye right on your forehead, right? You said something really interesting that I find fascinating that I'd love to hear more CISOs say. In the beginning, you said you really encourage reporting. Yeah. How do you encourage that amongst your company? Because we find that when the clients we work with, that's the hardest shift, is getting people's mindset into just reporting. How have you successfully been able to do that with your company?
Taking really the same approach to everything else, like just trying to cover them up with this idea. So when we have, the annual training, we make sure that we're driving home, hey, there is this report button. Here's what happens when you click it and why we want you to do it. We elevate when we get some, we've seen some pretty significant attempts to get it, footholds in our environment through these third party, emails and phishing attempts. And we've fortunately had as much as like 25% of the recipients sending, reporting.
Wow, that's nice.
Those emails. And so we highlight that. Like we had our CEO, I reached out, a bunch of back and forth internally, but I had the CEO I guess it was the COO of the company, sent an email and basically called those people out that had reported it, thanking them, because that really kind of helped our response to that particular event. So that plus we have sometimes, and because full disclosure here, like we've gone we've been pretty nasty with the users when we send stuff out. Like, hey, here's your 2025 pay increase details, because we actually saw that
right.
That pretext come in several times. And so we thought, well, let's use that. And so the caveat is, we sometimes include a banner at the top that says, look, this is the phishing email. Don't lose your mind that we're trying to, do dirty things and trick you into tapping into your anxiety over your increase for the year. But please, understand that attackers are using this as a pretext to phish you, and practice that muscle of hitting the report button on this email. So we'll use, instead of, I guess the point is, like, instead of just sending phish emails out every month, we're sometimes taking that as an educational moment to say, look, this is the phishing email, but read through this and look, because you're going to see this and it's not going to be us next time. But use the report button. So we do that, and we do like internal blog posts in our SharePoint and stuff about different types of things we're seeing, and we'll reinforce, make sure you're using that report button. And there's been a couple times where we've had something happen where somebody reported something, or where it was kind of public, like, hey, there's this thing that I saw, we'll hop in on that and say, hey, by the way, make sure that you're using the report button. That really helps us see that these things are happening and be able to bring our resources to bear on the situation as much as we can. So it's basically just everything we can do to try to make sure that people know that button's there and they should use it.
I love it, because honestly, what we have seen over the years of doing this is when a company does non-punitive, like rewarding for things like what you just said, like having the COO of the company call out those folks who saved you guys. That's going to make such a huge effect on the people. Right? They're going to see that and go, I want to get called out. Like, they might not physically say that, but they're going to think, like, that's kind of cool. Like, they called out Joe for being like the hero. And that motivates, as opposed to seeing, like, here's the losers who clicked this month, right? I've seen that before. It's terrible, right? I'm like, oh, no,
we're fired because we warned them. Right. We told them, this is your third strike. Sorry.
Oh man, I can't. I've seen that before, and it kills me every time, because you're like, now you're creating insider threat, right? Because if people are afraid and then they're angry, that's the greatest way to create insider threat.
100%. Right? Yeah, that's true.
So let's talk about that, because that's another big topic today. So insider threat. This is a huge, we're seeing, on the dark web, the sales of credentials has gone up. Companies who do use punitive damage and fear, we see those companies have employees that are willing to sell credentials or aid the bad guys. How are you, I don't want you to give away all your secrets, right? But how are you?
Sure, yeah.
How are you educating your staff or detecting if there's some insider threat that you need to get ahead of before it becomes an actual problem?
Well, this is a problem that I think is most easily dealt with or mitigated by just all the defense in depth stuff that we do. If you're adhering to the least privilege everywhere you can, you're limiting the damage that an insider can do to your environment. if you're, putting additional controls around how they interact with things, like you can't do certain things, you're not allowed to download this file because it's too sensitive, but you can interact with it online, like take advantage of all these things and putting the extra controls in place where it makes sense, really helps anyway. Cause I don't think there's necessarily a way to stop somebody from being an insider threat. But you can certainly, try to improve your odds in those situations. And I think that's pretty much all we do. We do try to use our detection tools as ways to try to highlight when somebody's maybe doing something that might be a little bit suspicious that we can dig into, even if it's a little bit false positive laden. It's better for us to take a look and realize, hey, this is not a big deal than for us to miss it completely. So
I love it.
That's the approach we take.
Yeah.
But the other thing too, you mentioned something else in that, we're really, really keen this year on getting rid of passwords altogether because of the prevalence of credential theft.
Yep.
And we're very keen on going to a 502 solution. It's not going to be too onerous on the users, like maybe not hardware tokens, but maybe something that's more passkey related, so that we can, take a lot of the typical, credential theft options off the table for our environment anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really smart. I've seen a lot of companies that are using even biometrics, which are really hard to fake. And I think what you said is so important, making it so it's not too difficult on the users. Cause as soon as you make it too difficult, they'll find the bypass.
100%. Every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I literally was just talking to one of my internal sysadmins today about this, where he has it locked down. So on your cell phone, you can't copy something from your corporate email and paste it somewhere else. So someone wanted to get a phone number to me, and she was really frustrated and she couldn't do it. So what did she do? She forwarded the email to her Gmail and then did it. And I'm like, just let them copy it.
There's always a way.
Right. Yep. This is so restrictive for no reason.
With something else, like you can't stop. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. When you make it difficult to do your job, they're going to find that workaround. And it's like, no, we don't need to, I love that. Okay. So let me ask you this question, as we get near the end here. If there's a new CISO, somebody who just started their job, they're listening to this episode, what 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice would you give them to kind of maybe jumpstart and get to where you are without having to make all the mistakes?
It's not actually security advice. I think the biggest advice that I would give to CISOs to help them be more effective, like if you're at the role of CISO in your organization, completely understand your business, make, friendships, good relationships with those who are on the operational side of your business, whatever it is. Understand the financial motivations that exist inside the company and how it operates. Spend some time with the CFO if you can. Get to understand where their concerns are and how the company makes money and where there's constraints, because all this knowledge is going to help you understand where you need to circle the wagons internally. Like these things are very important. And it may be things that you wouldn't have thought of just naturally through your own security acumen. I assume that if you're to the point of being a CISO, that you already have security acumen, so that's usually not where the gap exists. It's speaking the language of the business. It's understanding the language of the CEO and the CFO and the board, understanding where their concerns are and how security can be brought to help alleviate or mitigate risks in those environments. And that will help. That'll be the rudder that helps you steer you towards success more than anything else.
I love it. Thank you for that. So if people want to reach out to you, chat, is LinkedIn the best opportunity for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do try to monitor my LinkedIn and stay on top of it as much as I can. It's a little bit of a mess sometimes, but I love connecting with people. I love talking to people, and happy to do so if somebody reaches out.
And I'll make one caveat for Travis: as long as the first 5 minutes you're not trying to sell something. Okay.
Yeah, exactly right.
I hate when they do that, because my LinkedIn's everywhere. It's like, if you can't even make it 5 minutes past the hello before you're like, let's set up a meeting so I can sell you this stuff, block, delete, disconnect, right?
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to LinkedIn.
Yes, exactly. Okay. I got two final questions I always ask. For me, I know I wouldn't be sitting right where I am today if it wasn't for a few key mentors in my life. And I can think of at least 3 or 4 that without them, boy, I don't know if I'd be who I am today. Do you have any key mentors that helped you along your path to get where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we all do. I think there's an iron sharpens iron, and growing up in the Nokia environment, I was extremely blessed with some really, really solid colleagues to work with, and still friends with these folks to this day. After 3 decades, Son Edwards for sure. I think he's the CISO at Zio Group now. Others, Jay Leak was part of that crew, now running Sin Ventures. And I actually have to call out somebody who I don't even know who it is. I was on a bulletin board in the 80s, and my entire career came down to a single multi-line BBS where a guy asked me while I was looking for games to download, have I ever read these text files that exist on the bulletin boards? And I said, not really. I see those a lot, but they look like a bunch of boring stuff, and he's like, well, if you actually knew what was in those, you wouldn't be spending any time with games. And he wasn't wrong. And so I don't know who that was, but that was what opened my mind and my eyes to, the world of security. So props to that guy.
Talking about 1980s BBCs. Whew.
Yeah, man.
You youngins don't even know what we're talking about out there.
That's right. That's a very different world. No internet. It was all bulletin boards, and long distance, and all kinds of fun stuff.
That's really great. Okay, and then lastly, if people that listen to this podcast for years, they're avid readers. So we have actually on the .org, we have a very long list of books that people have recommended over the years. It doesn't have to be about being a CISO. It doesn't have to be about security. It can be any kind of book that you read it and you're like, everyone needs to read this book. What book or books would you recommend?
That is a very hard question. I read a lot of books, and I love lots of books. I would say the one that has influenced me most as a leader is one that I sort of fell into accidentally. A friend of mine had, I get book recommendations, and I give book recommendations all the time to people. Somebody recommended Lee on Leadership. And so I read that book. It's a super easy read, and it was okay. But I was really kind of blown away by the insights of this, leader of the South. And I was always, I'm from the North. I was born in Michigan. The South's like the evil people. We don't care about them. But it was enough in that short read for me to kind of get really interested in this Lee guy. He was much more complex and I feel like insightful than I think he's given credit in a lot of the history books and stuff. So I went and found the biggest, like, Pulitzer Prize winning, multi-volume biography of Lee. It was like 4 volumes, and that reading through that and understanding the challenges and the weights that were on this man, or how he reacted to different things, good or bad. Like, there's criticisms you can make of him, but there's things that he did that were like, wow, I don't know that I've been able to do that in that situation. That has influenced me tremendously over the years. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And I wish I could tell you the name of the actual, but it's the only 4-volume biography on Lee that's out there. It was written like back in the early 1900s, I believe, like 1920s or something like that. So there were still Civil War vets around when the guy was writing it. So, well,
I'll put the Robert E. Lee on Leadership in the show notes, and maybe people will dig.
There you go. There you go.
So, that's fun. We haven't had that book recommended, so I love when we get something new, right? So that's great. Oh, Travis, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your insights. I'm sure there's a lot there that people can pick out to help them with their careers and stay a little more secure. I really thank you and appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's, I've really enjoyed the friendship over all these years, and it's great to still be connected to you, man.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you too. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed it, and stay tuned for next month. We'll have another security professional on having some great conversation. Until then, stay safe and secure. See ya.